Hi everyone, this is Diana and Karissa from ASAP Accounting and Payroll, and we're here to share the new Form W-4 for 2020 and review some changes with you all. The IRS released the new Form W-4 in December of 2019. This was the first major redesign since 1987, and it's much different than any previous version. Form W-4 instructs employers on how much tax to withhold from an employee's paycheck. Any employee beginning a new job in 2020 or any current employees wishing to change their withholding will face a drastically different form. So let's talk about what's so different, why the change, impact on workforce, and impact on business. So what's so different about this form? Well, really, gone are the numbers, and that means that there's no longer any allowances which were used to calculate withholding on the old W-4. Those allowances were based on personal exemptions, which are now not available under the current tax code. Instead, the 2020 Form W-4 accounts for all sources of income as amounts to determine the correct tax withholding amount. So no more allowances and instead amounts. These sources of income include multiple jobs, spouse's income, self-employment, and even income from dividends and interest. It's almost like a mini tax return. So why the change? Well, in 2017, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act got rid of the dependency deduction and increased the standard deduction. All taxpayers saw these changes come to life in 2018 on their individual tax returns. And while the IRS waited until now to update this form, this new Form W-4 reflects those changes and matches the federal tax code. If you're starting a new job, you'll be required to complete this new Form W-4. The IRS has created an online estimator to help employees determine the accurate amount, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But because this new Form W-4 is significantly different, communicating the changes will be a challenge. And as an employer, you must balance this desire to help your employees with the understanding that you should not be giving tax advice. So let's dive into these changes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Diana. We have some tips for completing the new W-4 form that I'm going to go over. There are 5 steps to this new form, and only steps 1 and 5 are required. Step 1 is to enter personal information for the employee, and in this section, they select what their withholding status is. And then steps 2 through 4 only pertain to are only filled out by employees if it pertains to them and their situation. Step 2 covers if an employee has multiple jobs or if they're claiming married filing jointly and their spouse also works. And in this step, they would complete or they would select either A, B, or C options. Option A would be to go onto the IRS website and use the tax estimator. B, they can use the worksheet that's a part of the W-4 form. Or C, if there are only 2 jobs involved, they can select the box there on both of their W-4 forms. Either if they have multiple jobs, they would select it on each form, or they would mark that box on their form and their spouse would mark the box on their form. And those are the options for multiple jobs. Step 3 is if employees have dependents to claim. And again, if they're claiming married filing jointly, they would only fill this section out on one of the W-4 forms. And it provides information there on the number to multiply if you have, depending on how many qualifying children you have. And then you would write the final amount there in on the line 3 for the dollar amount. Step 4 in Section A is where you can list if you have other income from any additional jobs, and that is an annual amount that you would list there. Step 4B is if you are claiming any deductions or itemizing your deductions on your tax form, then you can list the amount there that's over the standardized deduction amount that you plan on claiming on your form. And then 4C is a per pay period amount, that you can, if you want to have any extra withholding per paycheck, you would fill that amount there on step 4C. And once the employees go through and decide if each of those steps pertain to them and complete all those steps, the last thing for them to do would be to sign and date the form and turn it into the employer. And here's on page 3, this is the multiple jobs worksheet that employees can use if they're selecting step 2, option B. This is where they would fill out, or step 4B. There's a deduction worksheet also where they can pull their numbers from that way. And then on page 4 of the W-4 is the table, again, to use if an employee is using multiple jobs. They would use this table as a part of that worksheet to determine if they should enter anything on line 4C.
Awesome. Well, Karissa, tell us a little bit about the IRS withholding estimator that they put out.
Yes, the IRS withholding estimator is a great tool that employees can use to go on and figure out what their tax liability may be. It is the most accurate way where they can figure out what their withholding situation looks like. So employers, you can really encourage your employees to go on and use this tool to get the best picture possible. If they don't have access to the website, then they can certainly use those worksheets that we previously showed you, but really if you can get them to go onto the website, that would give them the best idea.
Yeah, and just to reiterate a little bit more, this will take a lot more time for employees to complete, and if they use the withholding estimator, they will need a copy of their check stub and previous year's tax return, as well as information on any spousal income. So this is kind of where the mini tax return comes into play, but at the end of the day, it will really give them an accurate picture. So definitely want to point people from that to that withholding estimator. Karissa, talk a little bit about the exemptions.
If an employee is claiming exempt in 2019, by February 16th of 2020, you would need to get a new W-4 for them. And if they still qualify for exemptions or to have exempt withholding, they meet those qualifications listed there on the left, then they can certainly still file exempt for 2020. They would just need to write exempt underneath line 4C as pictured here.
And this is a little different because it doesn't necessarily have a field for them to complete for exempt. They actually have to manually write it in as we kind of indicated here. This is not on the form. They actually have to write it in between those lines on the form. So a little different again. So, and just to kind of recap what we've talked about today, really the key tips here are to encourage employees to use the IRS's tax withholding estimator. Of course, you want to encourage the employees to read the instructions that are actually included with the form. That's on page 2 of the new form W-4. And then again, steps 1 and 5 of the new form are mandatory and the minimum number of fields that an employee needs to fill out. And it is not required for all employees to complete this revised form, but again, those that are new hires or any employee, any current employee wishing to change their withholdings for 2020. So you certainly want to encourage folks, but it's certainly not mandatory to have all your employees complete a W-4 each year. So again, it will take more time for employees to complete this form. You should not expect employees to complete this form on their first day or in a short amount of time. And instead, you might even consider sending this form ahead of time and allowing employees ample time to use that estimator and accurately complete the W-4 for payroll setup. So ASAP, if you're a client of ASAP, we have the new Form W-4 on our website for you. The Spanish version has yet to be released, but the English version is on there. And we also have updated our ASAP new employee worksheet, and this is our ASAP form that's required for our setup because, again, you want to retain the originals of those W-4 forms in your personnel files. Anything else that I might have missed, Karissa?
Not that I can think of. I think that covers the basics for this new W-4 form.
Awesome. Well, thanks, you guys. A couple other tips to point out is we do have some information on ASAP's Help Center. That's at support.businessasap.com. We have some helpful articles on there on completing the new W-4. And then the IRS also has a great website with frequently asked questions. Again, this is a drastically different form, so take some time to get to know these changes so you can communicate them effectively to your team. And of course, at ASAP, we want to help you spend less time in accounting and more time to play, so hopefully you hike, bike, ski more. Thanks so much.